Hey, so today's video, I want to talk about whether when bad things happen, is it you that's creating them and manifesting them, or are they supposed to happen anyway? I know it's controversial, okay? I've heard a lot of people talk about this, and I think the answer is somewhere in the middle, but I'm going to explain why. I've heard people say that things that happen to them, like let's say bad situations, can be a result of something that happened in their past life, some kind of karma they need to work out. I mean, karma is, a very interesting topic, but there are a lot of loopholes or flaws in that concept, which I'll explain maybe in another video. But the point is, do these things that happen to you, are they your fault when bad things happen? When you lose your job, for example, when you have some kind of misfortune or sickness, let's say, is it your fault? And I think the answer is, it depends. And so the reason it depends is that firstly, it has been shown that we influence thought, through our thoughts, we influence reality physically. And this is a holographic effect. This has been shown in many different studies to do with DNA, emotions, the effect of emotion on DNA, and all kinds of other things like that. I think we do have a lot of influence over the physical world with our thoughts. And this is where the law of attraction stuff comes in, manifestation. This stuff is, based essentially in that concept that we influence the world through our thoughts. So I think there is something like that going on. However, there are things that happen which I think are more just a result of the collective manifesting it and society as a whole, right? And I think it's really important to be able to understand the difference between things that we can't control and that are just happening, that we have no influence over. And, from those things, I think we should detach, really, because getting attached to them and trying to change or influence them only just makes things more confusing and makes things more complicated, right? But then, and then on the other hand, you have the situation where there are things you can control and you can influence. And for those things, I think we should influence them. The difficult part is knowing which one is which. How do you know what's happening to you is something you've created through your thoughts and actions, and they could be subconscious thoughts and actions, right? Or whether it's something that's just happening to you that you can't really control, and it's more just a question of how do you respond to it? How do you deal with it? And I found a very simple way of kind of working through this. So let's say something happens to you, it can be literally anything, right? Let's say you fall or let's say you lose your job, for example. Ask yourself, firstly, is this something I could have controlled myself? Maybe you were doing really bad work, in which case you can learn from that and, do better in the future. Or is it something that was just random, completely outside of your control? Like, for example, a company needing to make redundancies because they have no money. That's not your fault, and yet it affected you. So in that situation, you can't control it, and it wasn't based on your actions. So the only choice you have is to decide how to deal with that. So the best way of dealing with that would then be to just kind of accept it and move on and look for other opportunities. It was outside of your control. And another thing to realize is, you probably noticed this, when you look back on your life, things seem to make sense. Like, you can kind of connect the dots and say, oh, that happened for this reason, and then that led to this, and it kind of makes sense. You connect the dots and the picture makes sense. Unfortunately, that doesn't always work in the moment. Like, in the moment, things can seem random and confusing. You might wonder, why is this happening to me? I totally get that. And I think that's just part of being human, is that in the moment, we feel like things are just happening to us. But then later on, we find out, actually, firstly, we have influence over some of these things. I would say a lot of these things we have influence over, and we can kind of create using our thoughts. And then secondly, when things happen that are outside of our control, we can decide how to respond to it, which then determines what will happen next. So in a way, our response to situations then goes on to determine what situations we experience after that. So we're ultimately co-creating this world, essentially, the whole thing. We're co-creating this together. So let's just decide, instead of reacting emotionally, let's just decide, what do we want, and then work from there.